what if I show you how I can replace the top banner on the site? Let's just do that one thing, because that's the thing that you change most often. That's the thing that frustrates you the most. Let's just do that one change, and then let's see how that goes. Oh, you like that? Great. Should we do the mega menu next? That's great. And I think that that's kind of the path through to incremental delivery that gets people excited.
You're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-commerce strategy, technology and CX-focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and replatform specialists James Gurd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-commerce strategy and leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX. This episode is sponsored by Shopify, and another interesting topic. So we're back onto the area of digital transformation, technology change, and we're talking to a well-known sports brand in SportsShoes, and we're looking at their strategic approach to digital transformation, how they've managed operational technical change. And SportsShoes has experienced a lot of change recently, but it's also a large business. For those of you who don't know, in last year it was about 90 million revenue. It's not just UK, it's international. So there's a lot of complexity within the tech stack, which is why we're really looking forward to this episode today. So a warm welcome to Jon Cleaver, who's the CTO. Hey, Jon.
Hi, nice to meet you. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Really appreciate you taking the time, especially as I know you're just recovering from an illness. So I really appreciate that. And before we get into the digital transformation theme, let's start with an introduction. It'd be really good for people to hear about you and your background, because I really enjoy it. Your backstory as an avid runner is really relevant, obviously, to the story you're going to tell today from a technology point of view.
Yeah, sure. So my background, apart from probably a few years where I worked in legal services, has been in retail. So I've done a number of years, probably out of my 24 years working, I think probably 20 of them have been in retail. So I've always loved retail. I've always loved the cut and thrust of retail. The dynamic changes that go on in those marketplaces. I think I'm very, very driven from a sort of a KPI and results orientation. Those businesses started from very early on in my career with Time Computers, one of the first PC mail order retailers, who then went into retail stores very early in the infancy of e-commerce and the internet, and then through to working for Carcraft Used, UK's largest car hypermarket. Well, we grew that to a £200 million business across multiple sites. And then more recently working for Sophology, where we had 40 odd stores up and down the country selling home furnishings. Again, probably 200 plus million turnover business. And then into fast fashion within the style, which was really my first sort of pure play business that I'd worked for. And then I found myself here. So during that time, I've been dedicated to not only my job, my family, but also running. Love it, real passion of mine. And I'm very, very fortunate where I get to work in a business where my passion for running and what we do combine. So I think I can bring a different view on things and look at it through a runner's eyes, through the consumer's eyes, because I'm that consumer. So yeah, I do all distances from 3,000 meters through to marathon. And again, using this sort of obsessive goal orientation and task orientation, it kind of lends itself to both jobs. And breaking things down and managing things in small chunks and making what seems impossible possible through chunking things up. I think both philosophies can be applied in transformation projects and in running.
Yeah, and there is a real mental battle side to both of these, isn't there? Like the ability to overcome challenges, because if we take the digital transformation lens, we both know we've been through enough projects. Nothing runs 100% smoothly, no matter how experienced you are and how well you plan. There are bumps and there are like unexpected surprises and delights en route. And I imagine that mentality in running, in terms of coping with difficulty during races, probably lends itself quite well to that project environment.
Yeah, I think what you do is you develop. One of the most important characteristics you've got to have is resiliency, and be pragmatic, because things come along which you don't foresee, and that could be during the race, or it could be more likely probably during the many weeks you're spending training out there. Sometimes the weather isn't cooperative. We've just been through ice and snow I've been unwell for a number of weeks. I've had to adapt and respond to that. You look at some of the projects and difficulties we get, sometimes until you get right under the weeds of something, you don't realize quite what the challenges are going to unfold. I suppose the only thing you do definitely know is when you start on a marathon block or you start on a new transformation project, 100% you will get challenges. You'll get things which come along and things which try and derail you. And I suppose you've got to do your best through your experience to maybe try and predict where those could occur. And if you do manage to predict those successfully, whether it be navigating some more complex internal politics maybe, or issues which might occur, or characters you might need to manage slightly differently, you can sort of prepare those things, because the more you do, I think the more you learn about that sort of thing. And you hopefully what you do is keep a calm head while others around you are losing theirs. That's kind of part of the job. Certainly to be the to be that secure anchor in the project.
Indeed, and our focus today is not so much on the tech itself and how you set it up, and it's more about that whole project discipline and how do you manage and deliver these programs through a business and handle the change, because it is lots of like stakeholders, internal and external. So I guess the starting point for this conversation is you came into SportsShoes, at CTO level. One of the key responsibilities is to look at where you're at, look at how the business is currently functioning from a technical point of view, and what challenges are. So can you give us all that ground zero view? What were the key e-commerce or tech challenges that you saw when you joined?
So yeah, we there was a number of factors really, and I suppose what I'll probably do is segment them. If we look first of all at people, you look at internally in the team, I think there was issues that needed picking up there in terms of people feeling loved in their roles, like they were making a difference, didn't really see the impact on what they were working on, felt much like they were in the sort of the washing machine or tumble dryer, just doing work continually. I think they need a lot of work on building the morale and also the capabilities of those people, actually getting someone they could trust in. Because there was never a CTO in my role before. So we had that. There was external to that. We had external stakeholders in the business, which a bit like maybe the technology team that was there then felt disenfranchised. I think they felt disenfranchised in terms of what service they were getting from technology as well. So it was quid pro quo. There was obviously communication difficulties there that needed ironing out. And if we were going to move forward in any positive way, that had to be dealt with. The technology itself, SportsShoes, it probably was an advantage for some period of time, had built a lot of all of their platforms in-house and bespoke. Everything from clocking in, clocking out systems through to the fulfillment systems, inventory, the website, everything. There was an enormous estate of bespoke technology, which, as you can imagine, something that gets built on and built on and built on and built on and built on. Can you change this? Can you change that? Can you change the other? It was in a bit of a mess really that needed untangling. And to be perfectly frank, quite a few of those elements are still around that we still need to tackle, because it's I have to look at this as I've been there 3 years now, but you've got to look at this as maybe a 5 to 6, 7 year project to basically be able to refresh all that technology stack. Is really hard where the business has got to operate and run. I think we've done phenomenal what we have changed so far, but there's still a lot of hard work to do. So yeah, we looked. So the technology wasn't great. We had more bespoke work or projects than what we could ever possibly handle. And I've seen this in a couple of organizations I've been to, is that there was a constant cycle of failure where projects would be picked up, they'll be perceived to take too long and then dropped. And then the next project will be picked up, perceived to take too long and then get dropped. And then the next new shiny new thing would be picked up again. So that was a habit where let's get in a habit of starting and finishing. And almost if you get that flywheel turning, morale goes up in the team. You get more faith and buy-in from the stakeholders, and everyone feels a bit more positive about what they're doing. So yeah, that kind of gives you a bit of an idea of what I was walking into.
What do Mattel, Victoria Beckham, Sennheiser, and Glossier all have in common? They power their businesses with Shopify. Shopify is the most innovative and scaled commerce platform on the planet. It also happens to have the best converting checkout on the planet. Shopify, powering the future of enterprise commerce. Find out more at shopify.com/enterprise.
Yeah, it's interesting. Years ago, I worked with House of Fraser, and at the point they were evaluating their ecom stack, and did they go bespoke, did they go platform, but what did that mean? And there was so much custom coding built on top of the old Demandware, and so much in the back office stuff and the retail side, that any change on an ecom level had a down or upstream impact. And it's like spaghetti, and you're right, you can't do that all at once because it's chaos. So so let's get into the related question. That is you when we talked about this episode, you said that your strategic focus was on fixing pain points and finding benefits, because that's where you start by demonstrating value. But how did you identify what really mattered? Because there are, with that setup you described, there's an exponential number of things you can do. So what criteria do you use to pinpoint what's actually having a material impact and should get fixed?
I'd love to say there was some sort of rocket science to this, but there really isn't. In terms of the practical way of approaching this, was to talk to people in the various teams, in the marketing teams or in the operational teams, and my peers, and understand where they were frustrated and what things were blocking them from getting their job done, and then hooking into some of those projects in which you think, that actually, I've seen something like that before. That sounds to me like something which could be a quick win. Because what we didn't want to do is just keep on adding on and adding on and adding on to what was already something which we knew wasn't going to last the standards for a lot of time. But also, I couldn't reinvent the world in a really short space of time. So I think just from having those conversations, it became quite evident that as a multi-brand retailer, we are launching products continually. We got 3,500 running shoes, for instance, at any one particular period in time. So you can imagine there's probably 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 launches every single day of the week. And a lot of them are quite high-profile launches. And when you're dealing with brands such as Nike or Adidas or ASICS and so on, we've got to make sure that when we do launch these products, that we do that at a high degree of, how would you put it, digital excellence, I would suppose. It has to be across all channels, social, the website. It has to look great because we have to elevate ourselves from other people who've got the same product. But the nature of that beast is that before, we had to do a website release for every single time we needed to change a banner on the homepage. And bearing in mind, these website releases will take us 2 days to even just QA a release for the website. So we can only release once a week on a Thursday. And typically what happens in digital marketing teams the world over is that brand assets always come in late, copy comes in late, and everyone ends up in a world of frustration when they actually can't get the work done. So people end up working long evenings. Things fail because you get them wrong. We miss a deadline, blah blah blah, and it just looks pretty embarrassing. So we had to. I looked at that and I thought that's quite an interesting challenge. I bet we can solve that problem, and I bet we can solve that problem quite quickly because we've done things like this before with my team at In The Style. So if you want me to move on to exactly how we kind of went about that, I can.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice example, actually, because taking away barriers to people executing is such a pivot, such a critical role of a technology department.
Yeah, exactly. I think the key thing, I'd like to think that we should be here to get out of people's way, really, and enable them to do their jobs, not be a point of frustration. So, and then that frees them up to get on with their work. So we use a CMS platform called Prismic.io. It's a headless CMS. Again, I had used this before, so we had experience of how we could use it. And then we took this headless CMS and then we looked to see how we could integrate that with the PHP website that we had. And the first areas that we picked off were around the managing the volatile areas of the site, which would change a lot, the mega menu, the landing pages, the homepage, and so on. And just doing that small thing, which might have taken us a couple of weeks to roll out, straight away, we're out of that chaos. So if things do come in late or whatever, then that's with the marketing team, because they're no longer having to rely on us to deliver that service to them. And it also got the team thinking more in terms of products and tools as opposed to web pages. So you got to take a step back when you're looking at building a CMS in terms of building tools for people to use. So if a homepage banner might be a wrench, a ticker that goes at the top of the page might be a hammer, and you build your toolbox over time so that then the next time you need something that looks like this or behaves like this, you don't build it for that specific use case. You build the monkey wrench, for argument's sake, if that's the particular tool that's needed for that job. So we killed a few birds with that stone, and you start building a flexible tool set. So that really got our marketing colleagues really engaged with us. We're working very closely with them. The collaboration went up. The developers in our team were thrilled that they were working on some more modern technologies, and then seeing how that could make a difference to both the marketing teams, the business, and their particularly and their work as well. So that was quite a good example of getting that motivation up, that enthusiasm, and actually getting a bit of a result on quite something which would be pretty straightforward for most businesses.
Yeah, well, I really like the approach though, because we talked about is that you need to bring people on the journey when you're embarking on a transformation project that's going to take years, and not everything's going to land in the first couple of years. And you've touched upon about how you get people to buy in to this change because you're delivering tangible benefit early on. I guess the question I've got is, what have you learned through this process? What worked in terms of stakeholder engagement, apart from delivering stuff? What worked to get them to buy into it, to get them to contribute to the process?
Somehow you've got to actually be quite good at telling stories, I suppose, and it helps if you can paint a picture of what that outcome could look like. And then I think once you've kind of opened the door, then I think rapid succession of delivery also helps. So let's say, for argument's sake, you want to do a whole CMS transformation of the site, that's fine. But maybe what if I show you how I can just change how you can replace the top banner on the site? Let's just do that one thing. Because that's the thing that you change most often. That's the thing that frustrates you the most. Let's just do that one change and then let's see how that goes. Oh, you like that? Great. Should we do the mega menu next? That's great. And I think that's kind of the path through to incremental delivery that gets people excited. And I think always when I'm approaching a project, I'll always look to say, okay, what is almost the minimum I can get away with to solve 80% of the problem, or create or satisfy 80% of the opportunity, because oftentimes, as we know, that 20% that's left is often the hardest part of the project and probably takes you 80% of the time, and they're all the edge cases and exceptions and all the other things that come along with it. So I think that doing things incrementally, lowering the risk, bringing people on the journey, I think is the approach I like to take anyway. When we're approaching projects and products, really.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense because you touched on this earlier. If you implemented an entire CMS site-wide, the QA work, that you have in your technical delivery team, visual QA, technical QA, then the UAT work the business teams have. It's really hard actually to do that around day-to-day work. So I like, packaging up the whole MVP approach and that sequential approach. I think makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure the business teams probably enjoyed not having to spend like 3 weeks of UAT as well.
Yeah, it is. It's a real challenge, especially we have, really modestly quite small teams for what we have to deliver. We've got a back end team of 5 engineers, we've got a front end team of 5 engineers, and then the rest are in our operational and support staff. So it's not a great deal of capacity to do all that work. So I think that working in small chunks makes a lot of sense like that, and just get some wins out there.
Yeah, and something that I see a lot in projects, because I guess I'm on a different side of the project to you. I'm not delivering the technical side, but I'm working with all of the technical teams in a kind of customer lead and e-com consultant capacity. And what I see in larger organizations like SportsShoes, when you're at that scale, is that change can be disruptive, and you can manage change, but you can't dictate how people will respond to it. You can only then react. So what is your approach to handling people? Because some people are resistant to change. It threatens them. It destabilizes them. And what have you learned? How do you approach that if people won't adapt?
I think let's fast forward. So we got some quick wins out there. We won some confidence with the business, and I said, guess what, guys? I think we need to change we need to redo our e-commerce stack, right? So suddenly we got the biggest ticket project that the business has ever worked on, investing in multiple headless platforms and building our own front end. It was a really ambitious project. Now, the background to that is that Dan, my opposite number in our marketing function, he was quite fed up with, because there was so much work going on just to keep the site branded correctly and so on, that we could never actually move forward. And he wanted a new PDP, he wanted a new PLP, he wanted a new homepage design, he wanted a new cart, he wanted a new checkout. And I said, well, you need a new website, really, don't you? And then, right, okay, so if we're going to need a new website, well, what we don't want to do is we don't want to build it in what we've already got, because we both agree that really isn't sustainable going forward. So let's look at how we can do things properly at scale, and then come out with something at the other end of it, which is better for all of us, and most importantly, our customers. And Dan bought into that vision to do a whole new implementation. So I never really had any pushback from the marketing team, and they were very good in that. What they weren't doing is they were happy to sort of mothball any development on the current site whilst we were working on the new site. We worked with an agency at the time, and we went through a whole discovery process where we involved cross-functional teams to go through every single area of the website and then try and learn about what each function did, where it got its data from, how it operates, how important it is, and then challenge each one of those areas. And then we used the sort of Moscow approach to figure out what things were really, really important to us and our special sauce, and actually what things we could ditch. And then we did that very much as a team to understand, going back to this sort of premise of a minimum viable product, what we could deliver. But they were involved in that journey, cross-functionally. So they all had a vote, they all had a say, and then at the end of that, we could say, okay, well, this is what we think the new website the functions could look like. And then we also validated that through talking to customers directly. Good and bad thing. With me being a runner, I could be drinking my own Kool-Aid and just believe whatever I think. Well, I'm the runner, so I must know what I'm doing. Whereas it's not always the case. So most of the time it is. But we did speak to our customers, and we did interviews and labs with them where we got their feedback, and we showed them. We got them to do various challenges on the current website, and we got them to evaluate some mocks that we designed using InVision, so they could click through clicky prototypes. Got their feedback. We asked them to evaluate some of our competitor sites as well and give us feedback on what they liked. And we managed to meld all that feedback into what was a whole series of clickable user interfaces. And again, that was another area where suddenly the project comes to life, and suddenly people see the possibilities of this new world, and then everyone gets a bit excited. Rather than talking about abstract concepts and words and specs or whatever, then suddenly people think, oh great, that's actually what that could look like, and oh, what do we think about this, and what do we think about that? You got something to get around the table together with, and kick ideas around and see what will and won't work. So that worked really well at the outset, and then everyone kind of knew then what we were shooting for, and that was internally and externally. I'm dealing with partners such as BigCommerce, knew what we were working towards. The agents who we were working with at the time, they knew what we were working towards, and so on. And then also it helped us divide up the project in terms of which teams were the best to take which parts of the project over as well. And going back to what we discussed before about not everything going to plan, more certainly that was definitely the case. I mean, what we found as we were going along the project, never always works out, but always I think that whilst when you're trying to win a lot of confidence, getting quick easy wins in first makes a lot of sense. But when you're starting these larger projects, there are certain areas in that project which make you really, really nervous. So there might be areas, complex areas that you've got, I don't know, let's say payment services, just for argument's sake, let's say that that's the most complex part of your stack. Or it could be we have really complex different shipping rules to different zones and I think it's always a mistake really to try and worry about those problems at the end of the project, because they're always the things that derail you. So I think unearthing those things during discovering, pulling those things forward and then deep diving in those areas, I think really helps, and using those stakeholders to help you dig under the hood helps lessen the risk of the project as well, because you know you've not got a load of skeletons in the closet that you just wave to open a door and then they fall on your face really. So that works quite well. And then we did have points where we had to pivot. I mean, ideally we'd have delivered the first UK website in the August of 2023. But we were running way too close to that deadline, and we were going to run into peak if we messed it up. So we decided to just park where we were in terms of UK store, get through that peak period. But I managed to negotiate to be able to deliver our international stores, which were so our international stores is 4 of them, and they do about 20% of the business-ish. Let's just say that broadly. And those were the smaller train sets that I could put out there. I could observe each one of those when we released them, make all the mistakes, and there was a number on those sites. And then each time we'd roll out. So the first one might have taken us 6 weeks to stabilize in Spain, and then we've got we feel pretty confident now. We've gone through that. We fixed it. We got better. And then we did our Italian store, then our French store, then our German store. So using that iterative approach again, it built confidence, and that meant actually when the UK store went live, it wasn't really a drama. No one was really worried that it was going to be a disaster, because we've been trading on all the new stack for best part of 5 months before that. And we got a warning shot actually, which was interesting. And I remember this very clearly because I was on holiday at the time, as typically would happen. So I just got off a gondola in Venice, and the current website we're on had completely imploded. And it took us a good period of time to rescue that website, to get it back up and running. So having had that warning shot, that kind of woke everyone up to say, hang on a minute, we need to get this now rolled out really, really quickly, because what we don't want to happen is that occurring again, because really we didn't know why it had blown up. We just knew it had blown up, and it took us a long time to diagnose why that incident had happened. So that did me a favor in some regards, because that put the more risk averse stakeholders, it put a fire right up underneath them to think, actually, it's really serious now. We need to push forward, because before that there might have been a reason every week for why we shouldn't do it.
It's interesting, because you never want your site to go down like that, do you? Because I know the pain it creates in the IT department, but also in the stakeholders trying to manage the customer expectations. But it's funny how sometimes that sharpens the resolve. And it was really nice to hear actually about the approach to factoring the customer feedback loops, because I remember doing a project a while back with Selfridges, and it was on a micro level. It was more about like on-site changes, and there was real resistance to what we saw in the data and to making changes because of such tight brand and customer experience controls. And then I just basically got them to invest £500 on remote video sessions with customers to get the customers to video their experience of that user journey and comment on it and show what was the problem. And 5 customer videos played in a boardroom and in front amongst a senior group, and suddenly everyone changed their viewpoint, and that barrier goes. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that there's different levers, aren't there, to tackle different, I guess, personality types.
Yeah, I think that's is very, very powerful. And sometimes you're sitting there watching those videos back like, but it's great to have that feedback, and it does getting that on the boardroom table, if you will, like you said, then I think it's a really powerful motivator.
It is, and I really like that incremental approach you talked about launching your lowest risk stores first. I'm doing that with a pet care client at the moment, and UK's their main business, and they just launched into Europe, and the trial site was Germany, and that went live without any marketing activation, just to get it live and see what we had missed. Because you're right, it doesn't matter how good your team is, how good the tech is. There are so many moving parts in a replatforming or a new launch. There are so many integration points, so many data points, that there's always something that you've missed that you don't see until it's in the wild. And that's exactly what it has, a period of fine tuning, so that then when you get to the next launch, you've ironed out all the things. So interesting. So that brings you on to my next.
Just one thing, which is just linking into that a sec. One top tip, I suppose, is that when we did our launch, you might have done the same in your experience, is that we shut, or the new store we put live had no exposure to Google either. So any of those, because there is massive SEO concerns when you're replatforming a site as well. It was not crawlable, it was not visible, and then we did some shenanigans in the background so that even though customers weren't shopping on the old site, that Google would be redirected and would crawl the old site. So that again bought us time, because I could tell you now, people start panicking when organic visibility drops, and it's unfortunately it's inevitable that it's never gonna, you're not gonna put a new website in and switch it and it's gonna go, that's gone through the roof. It's never gonna happen in a million years. It's always gonna go down before it goes up. And I suppose what you're trying to do is you're trying to shorten that curve back up again, which is tricky.
Yeah, well, unless the current site is so royally screwed up for SEO that it's impossible to make it worse, which does exist sometimes. But you would hope, obviously, where businesses of your stature, you would hope that the SEO is in a rudimentary health anyway. So,
yeah. To be fair, there'd been a lot of work done on that, and it was a very, very deep site, too deep even, where Google could only crawl, I think, 20% of it before it give up. Now, that in itself is a problem, because it's missing loads and loads of pages that we do want indexed. So whilst it was a really fat site in terms of content that was there, a lot of it wasn't getting anywhere near the edges of it. So yeah, that's an important thing.
Yeah, it is. And it's I was having a conversation with another client of mine recently about this, about technical SEO skills are undervalued in large replatforming projects. If you don't have it in-house, you fundamentally need somebody who's got that architectural understanding as well.
Yeah, we worked with an agency on that, Propellernet, and they were very, very good, very, very good, and held our hand all along that approach to launching the UK store. Like they were more on the risk averse camp, but they were sort of they were one of the parties which, once that old website had gone down, were like more than happy to take the shove just to say, this can't happen again. So yeah, that was. But yeah, having those advisors there, if you don't have them internally, is really, really, really important, because you can make a right mess.
And I'm sure the PropellerNet are delighted that the plug on the podcast as well. They'll be happy that the name's been mentioned. Yeah, I've heard other people speak highly of them too. Let's get onto the e-com stack, because I'm keen on this. I've worked on a few BigCommerce projects, and you built, so BigCommerce is the commerce engine, but you said you've gone through more of a headless approach with other tech as well. Can you talk? I guess I've got two questions. First one is, how did you get to BigCommerce? Because the market's big. There's loads of platforms, and everyone's shouting at merchants like yourselves for like migrations. So how did you get to BigCommerce as the right fit? And then what is the wider stack that you've built out?
What was important to us at the beginning, going back to really, I mean, we sell running shoes and running related products primarily. But anyone can do that to an extent. Where we differentiate ourselves is pretty much we are a content and experience driven brand, really, and then we just happen to sell running shoes. What that means really is that in terms of what we do, we don't really want just a generic run of the mill cookie cutter website. So we want something which we can take a high degree of control and fidelity over how we want to present that to our customers is really, really, really important to us. That lent itself to Headless. We didn't want to have any restrictions in terms of the templating engine or anything like that. So we knew we landed on that, and we knew which front end technologies we wanted to use, because they're the skill sets that we already had in the team. We knew we wanted to use Vercel, we wanted to use Next.js. So they were pillars that we knew we wanted, and then what we didn't want to have is, again, another bespoke, homegrown platform that we build ourselves. So we're going to lean on a third-party platform. And then we looked at the usual suspects. And I think the easiest way of getting to where we got to with BigCommerce was what would be the technologist's ultimate approach, which might be, I don't know, something along the lines of a commerce tools, maybe, where you get a very, very flexible set of building blocks you can do whatever you want with, but literally anything you build and anything you do with those building blocks, you need to kind of do yourself, which involves quite a heavy lift from an engineering effort. And as you can imagine, time and budget when it comes to that. But you could compose something fantastic. Given unlimited resources, time and budget, you could do something from that perspective. And I think that sort of platform really works well for those companies which are maybe double the size of ours. If you're a 200 million turnover e-commerce business, I think you can probably afford to do a transformation project that's going to cost you 2 million quid to build a new website, right? We weren't fortunate enough to do that. We felt like at the time, I'm sure it's changed all this time with these things too. There was more generic offerings, top off the shelf type offerings, which we didn't feel was quite right to us. It was too rigid. And BigCommerce was kind of sit somewhere in the middle, where in terms of we could use the headless nature of their product, have the flexibility of building our own interfaces, but hook in some of the more commoditized areas of that platform, which were already pre-built. So you kind of got like a bit of a halfway house, and we could build that within the modest budgets that we had available to us to tackle that project. And we also knew we wanted to bring alongside that a mobile app as well, bring that to market. So we needed something which was going to have a flexible platform for us to be able to do both the website and the mobile app over time. So that's where we got there. So it worked for us, right? I think for our size of business, we're not a small business. We're kind of in that awkward place where we're not a big business either. So we're probably small, medium in terms of what we do. It felt like a good fit, and the project team we got given and people that helped us deliver the project from BigCommerce were very, very good and supportive all the way through that project, through a lot of ups and downs, because we found that we were one of their very first headless implementations, and we really pushed the boundaries and the capabilities of that platform in a number of areas in which they had to respond to and help us resolve. So there was a lot of ups and downs, a lot of emotions, but we got there in the end.
And broader to, how did you then branch out? I'm assuming the starting point was BigCommerce, the platform. Then what else have you built around there? What are the key other technology stacks? So we mentioned Bloomreach. I mentioned your front ends.
Yeah, so Bloomreach has been great for search. So that does a great job. Anything would have done a much better job than what we had before, which would be a bonus. So Bloomreach, yeah, that's our search platform. We've got Stripe for payments. I've already mentioned Prismic.io for the CMS. And we very much built the website ground up from CMS. So all elements of that site are pretty much all CMS driven. So anything our creative team want to change, they could pretty much change any part of content on that site, which works really well for them. Again, I'd have to worry about it. The website could look completely different tomorrow without any engineer being involved. That's from building their own bespoke store pages, building bespoke PDPs, completely reimagining the homepage, and also using them extensible frameworks when it came alongside us building our mobile app that again hooks into the same technologies. So our content editors and content creators are using Prismic, and then they can choose whether they're going to publish that particular article to both the app and the website, or one or the other, and they've got reuse there. This banner might go on the website, this banner might not. This competition is going to go on the app, it's not going to go on the website. So because we've built them a whole toolbox full of tools, they can really the world's their oyster in terms of being able to build out. So that's been out. We've really managed to be able to leverage on that reusability from that perspective, and have a familiar way of working to increase the throughput of those teams. I mean, before we published maybe 1 or 2 articles every couple of weeks, and then they'd need to be internationally translated, and then it would take another 2 weeks for them to be published because they have to go through a development pipeline. Whereas now we publish an article, it gets translated, and it can be out within 2 hours of it being written. Which has been transformational to people who do that as a job.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Headless CMS, where people have any significant workflows and publishing control needs, because native page builders just don't do it. And then you get into customization land, and actually that becomes really messy, as opposed to using a tool that's intended and defined to do that. You've talked a lot about, obviously, building out from the principle of headless architecture. I'd love to know what impact that had on your engineering team, because you said you're a relatively lean engineering team for a business of the size you're at. How did the engineering team structure have to change? And also linked to that was, I think you mentioned that you'd reunited some of the team you previously worked at in the style. What benefit to your project delivery did that have?
Yeah, so there's a couple of guys who I've worked with for a number of years. I'll give them a plug. We've got Lee Witherington and Imran Sarwar, who are our lead engineers. Brilliant people, brilliant brains, and much smarter than me. And you need people that are smarter than you in the team, right? So bringing them on board, I think if you're fortunate enough to do that, we're all comfortable working with each other. We all understand our strengths, our weaknesses, our foibles, because we've known each other for so long. And also, we've gone through the ups and downs and the emotions together. And also, we've delivered some brilliant projects over the years. So I suppose what that comes down to is we trust each other. And we all trust what we're all going to do our jobs. And Imran looks after the web and the front end team, and Lee looks after a lot of the back end services and those engineering teams. So and then I just do I'm just the mouthpiece. So yeah, that accelerated not everything. Without those guys, we'd have been really struggling, because not only did we have to transform the technology, we had to take a lot of the team on the journey. Now, to be frank, not everyone made it. There were some people who just don't want to really adapt or change or improve, and sometimes it baffles me really. But it's not for everyone, And we tried really, really hard, mentoring people, coaching people, putting people on training courses. But at the end of the day, you take a horse to water, but it ain't always going to drink. But there have been some absolute shining stars which were in that original team. And if you'd have asked me at the beginning, how many out of this list are going to last the duration, I wouldn't have thought. I'd been amazed that I picked one or two out, to be honest. But I've been really, really impressed with the vast majority that have got on the bus and committed to the change, committed to improving their skills, committed to doing the learning. And I think everyone's benefited from that, because the technologies they're working on then are just not marketable anymore. They're almost redundant. They're irrelevant. You would be borderline unemployable right now. So we've helped them guys build their careers. They've helped us, just as much. And we've all gone on a bit of a journey together. So that's been great. So yeah, from those, so bringing the guys on board that I knew and trusted accelerated that. They've done a great job of bringing a lot of those guys on board, and the people they brought along with them are now levels above where they were before, from the effort they've put in and the mentoring they've had from both Lee and Imran.
Yeah, it's at that point about like your future career paths as well, and when technology changes in terms of what's important and what's valued and where employability lies, it's so critical. I worked with another business and last year, and one of the big issues that the team internally were having is the stack they're on was not one A, they're excited about, but B, also it's a stack that lots of brands are moving away from to more modern, whether it's SaaS or Composable. And for them to then get to the next stage without that expertise, it's so much harder for them. So yeah, it's a really interesting point. And it brings me on to my final question, which is, these projects are intense. We all know they're fun. You basically, it's like this vortex you get pulled into. But then once you've done your initial launch and you're now live on a new stack based on BigCommerce with Bloomreach, with your new front end, etc., you then have to, as well as continue to deliver the rest of the project functionality, you've then also got to do a bit of a pivot because you're into product management world as well, and it's a new product. How have you found that? Like, how have you found adapting to the disciplines and the team, getting them to adapt to running a product, not just a project?
Maybe I'm not sure. The philosophy's changed much. I'm not so sure really, because we still very much work in that sort of incrementality approach. We don't have. The great thing is once you've got a foothold and you've delivered that project, you can then start to rapidly improve things, especially with the new technology we got. If I mentioned before, we did one release a week, so that'd be 52 releases a year. I'm sure one of the team told me the other day that over the last 12 months, there've been something like 5,000 releases that we've done from that team. That's how incremental they are. They're delivering constantly to production. So we're quite fleet of foot in terms of what we do. We will often engage with some requirement might come from our marketing team, it might come from a brand, it might come from a partner. We will look at that. We will speak to our UX design guys that we've got. They will go away. They will design that product. We'll bring it back in. We'll look at how we can build it. Then we go through building it. And then obviously once we've built it, we need to make sure we go through a cycle where we test it, make sure it works, and then put it out to production. Now, in an ideal world, it doesn't always work like this. You put it out to production with some how would you describe it? Being able to measure the outcome of what that did. Now, this I suppose is a key difference from a massive project. I mean, like we can change the website from A to B, but when trading ain't great, what one thing do you point out that's gone wrong? You've delivered a whole new website. So, but once you're delivering small incremental gains, they can be very measurable. You can understand how many people are interacting with something. You can understand what conversion certain features have given you. And I suppose that's a key difference in how you think through a product management lens than necessarily what you would do for a project lens. It becomes more BAU, I suppose.
Yeah, indeed. And it's interesting when you're running the two concurrently, basically, because I think sometimes people struggle to separate roadmap of product from the delivery cadence of a project. And it takes good discipline and fundamentally you're working in sprints. So therefore there are different streams within the sprints, and it takes good discipline to manage those together.
It can get quite stressful though. It can get trying to land projects, doing the small BAU type stuff, the hygiene stuff that just needs doing, and then another project comes along and so on. When you've got a small team, that can become quite stressful. It needs a high degree of coordination really as well.
Yeah, indeed. Jon, I could sit and ask you questions all day, but I know that we've both got school runs to do as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come. I found that really interesting. I love hearing from digital leaders like yourself about how you approach these complex projects and how you manage to deliver it. So really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming on, and I hope everyone listening's enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Avi. I enjoyed that conversation. Somewhat cathartic, I think.
Yeah. It's confessions of project leaders, right?
Yeah, just after our parents said anything, the boss is going to fire me for now. But hopefully I'm safe.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much again, and thanks everyone for listening. And until next week, everybody.
Thank you. See you in a bit.
You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast, hosted by experienced consultants James Gurd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.